we're heading straight for those spoilers for Speed 2 Cruise Control.
I don't care!
I do believe we have a miss!
Impossible! No!
This is Diabolical, the comedy podcast that dissects films' most dastardly schemes, then competes to improve them. I'm your host, Craig, and this week's movie is Jan de Bont's 1997 seafaring sequel, Speed 2 Cruise Control. So, Peril Pals, hijack a high-octane passenger vehicle, set a course directly for Glenn Plummer's new sports car, and let's get diabolical. Hello and welcome to this special guest episode. Joining me on the Panel of Peril this week, Adam.
Hello.
Ben.
Hello.
Gaz.
Hello.
And our very special guest, the host of the excellent 50 miles per hour pod, Speed superfan, Kris Tapley. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys, for having me on.
We're absolutely thrilled to have you. I'm a huge fan of your podcast. So now, Hotshot, as with all our guest panel members, we're required to conduct a psychological examination to determine just how diabolical you are. It's a sort of impromptu surprise test. I feel like there's a phrase on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, I'll hand you over to our Resident Evil expert, Ben, who has some questions for you.
I'm concerned.
As Craig says, it's the part of the show where we ask you some scientifically determined questions, and we want to find out just how diabolical you are. It's like a Rorschach test, so please answer honestly with the first thing that pops into your head. Buses or boats?
Bomb. Naturally. That's all I'm thinking about lately.
Blockbusters or B-movies?
VHS.
Relationships started under extreme circumstances
Never worked.
or good old-fashioned wooing?
Never work was what came to mind. Let's see.
Yeah.
You want the Rorschach, that's it. Otherwise, it's a blank, which probably tells you a lot about my romantic life. Up to my wife, I'll say. Not including.
Okay, so you are unfairly fired from a beloved job. How do you get your revenge? A vicious online review or a dirty protest?
Something worse than both of those, certainly.
Yeah. Bomb again.
I think, property damage sounds about right, which I've done.
Okay.
Not just randomly, but when being fired from a job. There's a story there. It sounds weird, doesn't it? Yeah. There's a more PG-13 story than it sounds.
Are you allowed to tell it?
Yeah, sure. When I was in high school, I was a cook in a restaurant. I didn't actually get fired, but I ultimately did. So now that I think about it, this didn't result in me being fired. But the head cook was just a real piece of work, just really rode my ass. And he's one of these guys that for the rest of my life, no boss was going to compare to him. So it was just like I laughed in the face of authority going forward. But he really just got under my skin one day, and we were making a plate of hot cheese fries that we would put in the oven, right? So you've got the fries and you got the cheese on top, and then you put it in the oven to melt the cheese. So you would take that plate out, scorching hot with a glove, and transfer the fries over to another plate. And he just would not shut up about something that day. And so I transferred the fries over to a plate, and I took the scorching hot plate and I threw it against the wall right next to him, which means all those shards of porcelain glass would not be able to be picked up for a while because they were scorching hot. And then I clocked out and I left. And the boss, the big boss, the owner, fully understood. His name was Willie. The cook was Willie. I'll never forget Willie. He's probably dead now. But the manager, the owner, totally understood that Willie was a piece of work. And he was just like, listen, I'm not going to fire you. Willie can be hard on people. I'll just write you up. How's that sound? And I was like, sure, whatever. So that's my story anyway. Didn't expect to reveal that today. A lifetime ago.
It put you off the cooking industry for life, I take it.
It kind of did, actually. I went into being a waiter after that, a server and bartender, but I was never in a kitchen again after that job, now that I look back at it. And it's just an industry full of power-tripping 22-year-old non-college managerial twerps.
Right.
So there's that as well. Anyway, are we doing good? Is this good?
Yeah, this is great. Yeah,
I'm marking it all down.
It sounds evil so far.
You get a new car with a time travel feature, but it can only take you to 90s sitcom sets. Which set do you visit first?
90s sitcoms. Was Married with Children still going in the 90s?
Yeah.
I think it
That's
was,
the
wasn't it?
one.
Yeah.
yeah.
It was
Probably.
in the UK anyway.
Yeah, I know it started in 87, so I'm sure it was still going. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. Married with Children.
Good choice.
It's a good choice.
I'm sure it's coming back as a animation soon. I saw a clip of it
Wow.
about an hour ago. Yeah, they've got all the original cast back doing their voices.
Oh, that's
What?
cool.
For an animated? Okay.
Yeah. It's just same title, Married with Children, everybody back. Yeah, looks
Very
good.
good. I was married in the same place that Christina Applegate was married.
Wow.
Fun fact. She divorced that guy, but there's a picture on the wall in one of the bedrooms of their wedding. I'm like, well, this is nice. Thanks a lot.
All right. The zombie apocalypse is here. What is your weapon of choice?
Axe.
I was sure you were going to say bus. It just looked to be on brand. Mow those zombies down.
Axe came to mind first.
Right, a genie grants you one wish, but only if you kick a monkey first. What do you do? What do you do?
Well, how big's the monkey?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is the monkey big enough that if you pissed it off, it would be a bad idea?
Yeah, is there going to be retaliation from the monkey? Because I'll kick the shit out of a monkey that's not going to do anything to me.
Yeah, like a little cute little, like Ross's monkey from Friends. I'd kick that monkey.
It's that kind of size, yeah.
I mean, one wish, it's like, that's worth a lot. Fuck that monkey. Right?
Yeah. Although, if you go for the Ace Ventura monkey and you kick it and it dies, your wish might be, I wish I didn't kill the Ace Ventura monkey.
No, fuck him. He was in a movie. He was probably the one in Friends, too.
Yeah, I think he was the same one, yeah.
He had a good life.
That one
Yeah.
hoity-toity monkey thinks he's better than all the others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Probably lives in a fucking mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Huge pool.
Now, was the question, do I go forward with that? Or was the question, what's your wish? 'Cause I
No, it was
interrupted
what
you.
what do you do?
What do you do? I kick the monkey.
I'm intrigued now, though. So you kicked the monkey, but what's worth kicking a monkey to you? What is that wish?
A whole lot of things. To be perfectly honest with you.
More wishes.
I would probably wish for movies to be good again. That's what I would wish for.
Yeah.
Well, that would be doing the world a great service.
Yeah, I'd be very selfless with my wish.
Well, we've got Megalopolis coming.
Yeah.
Oh, you've read much about that?
Reactions to Megalopolis.
Megalopolis.
Let's say they've been mixed.
They've ranged from shit to very shit. And I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it.
I'm still going to
Oh,
see
yeah.
it too.
We'll see the hell out of it.
I'm pretty well sure I'm never going to watch that movie sober. That's for sure.
Were you not one of the people who said movies are back when Top Gun Maverick came out? I do remember distinctly feeling that felt like a 90s actioner to me.
Absolutely. I didn't say movies were back per se, but I definitely was just like looking at the outsized reaction to that movie, which was fine. I wasn't annoyed that people loved it as much as they did because it was a great movie.
Yeah.
But I was just like, we're talking about Oscars now. I'm like, guys, we got this movie every 3 weeks in the
Right.
90s. Like,
Yeah.
This shows how starved everybody was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is that just a dearth of ideas, or the studio's just
Oh, God.
playing too safe?
It's another hour and a half podcast, actually.
Mm.
All right, you're on a bus that can't slow down below 50 miles an hour, but you desperately need to use the restroom. What do you do? What do you do?
I go to the back and I tell everybody to turn around. I'm about to take a piss. Very simply. I mean, if we're not getting off and it's going to blow up or whatever, then yeah.
You can lift the hatch in the middle of the bus and go for a
Yeah.
wee down there.
Yeah, they've got
Yeah.
that hatch.
You might inadvertently defuse the bomb.
You
Who
know,
knows? Worth a shot.
you might piss on old Jeff though.
While Keanu was underneath there. Like, sorry, Keanu, I got to go.
It's okay.
And finally, who needs taking down a peg or two?
Oh, just generally. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Not multiple choice. Who needs taken down a peg or two? My 7-year-old could be humbled more than he normally is.
I
There you
know
go.
that feeling very well.
Uh-huh.
That comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, my girl's 7 too, so yeah, I feel for you.
I see your 7-year-old and I raise you 2 teenagers.
That's why you're in Tokyo.
Yeah, they're in Wales.
Yeah, he went out for some cigarettes. Was that 19 years ago?
I'm just totting up the results there. And there's one big aspect that's really standing out to me, and it's kicking a monkey. So for that and for all the other...
I get a
other
wish,
achievements-
man. It's not like I get $10.
No, it's worth it. There's no judgment here,
Yeah.
Except this one.
except for this one, which is the ultimate judgment. You have received 12 florets of evil broccoli.
I see.
Ooh.
Okay.
My goodness.
And how does that stack up against our other guests so far?
That is
where
a
am
new
I on the
high,
scale?
I believe.
That's a new
No
guy.
shit.
New high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you've had a bunch of dishonest guesses.
You've beaten. I think beaten Matt Spectro by 1.
That Spectro was evil. Our last guess was Jesse Hawken. How evil was Jesse?
Jesse was 8 evil. 8 Florence evil.
So no one else has ever kicked the monkey?
We'd have different questions every time.
Different
They're
questions.
scientifically determined.
Yeah.
There was one where
I got you,
you
I
had
got
to pin the blame of Rise of Skywalker on a 5-year-old, and Jesse Hawkins said he would do it. Yeah, so that's pretty evil. But he hadn't thrown boiling hot Pyrex at somebody, so it kind of levels out a little bit there, doesn't it?
He didn't tell us that he had. Now let's hear from Gaz with a synopsis of the movie.
Just about managing to stop the bomb from becoming box office bomb, that is. Speed 2 cruised towards narrow box office success, scraping in a total of $164 million against a budget of $160 million. The film was received even less warmly by critics, who, with the exception of Speed 2 apologists Siskel and Ebert, derided the wooden performances and terrible dialogue and lamented the absence of original star Keanu Reeves, a diminished role for leading lady Sandra Bullock, and an ironically drudging pace. In addition to Reeves, other key players absent from the sequel included original Speed producer Mark Gordon, editor John Wright, and screenwriters Graham Yost and Joss Whedon. The unlikely plot follows plucky heroine and still dangerous driver Annie Porter as she rumbles her rebound romance LAPD cop and the Jack Traven you ordered from Wish Alex Shaw, who has been deceiving her by pretending to be a beach cop while he is in fact a bigger adrenaline junkie than her former beau in blue. To try and make it up to her, Alex books the pair on a romantic cruise, only for the same shit to happen to the same girl twice, as Annie's ship is hijacked by disgruntled former employee John Geiger, who plans to plough the cruise liner at its top speed of about 30 knots, or around 35 miles per hour, into an oil tanker.
Thank you, Gaz. But what did the Panel of Peril make of Speed 2 Cruise Control? And let's start with our guest, Kris Tapley. Now, Kris, this is normally where we ask our guests to explain why they chose the movie subject, but there's a fairly obvious connection to the subject of your excellent podcast, 50 Miles Per Hour, which is, of course, an oral history of the original Speed. So beyond that, thinking about the format of the Diabolical podcast, was there anything about the plot or the character of villain John Geiger that made you think this would be a great choice to revisit?
I'm thinking. I mean, he's so unhinged. It's kind of crazy, right? It's kind of weird. Like I do this thing on the 50 Miles Per Hour podcast where I had my kid review the first movie for 10 minutes and then he reviewed the second one for 10 minutes. And he said that John Geiger was badder than Howard Payne. And it caused me to stop and think. I was like, well, wait a minute. He is a little more just weirdly unhinged, like arbitrarily so, which obviously all of that is because it's a bad screenplay. But like, it's just like that copper really went to his head, like clearly. So
Yeah.
As it's known today.
So to answer your question, my main thing was, hey, let's do a Speed thing so I can promote my podcast.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's interesting. It's like the least Dafoe movie of all time. Like you almost forget that he's in that movie, that he's this bad guy, and he probably would like you to forget. And it's also just interesting that he was sort of up for the role of Howard Payne. They wanted him among millions of other people that said no. So
Yeah, it was a long list, but yeah, it was interesting that he was up for that. Also interesting, David Lynch connection as well with Dennis Hopper and the guy from the diner who's in the elevator. What's his name? I love that guy, but I never remember.
Patric Fischler.
Fischler. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Who said no to Speed too?
Yeah.
Smartly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had just done Twister and he was like, you know what? I'm good.
Yeah. Don't know if that's because he didn't want to work with Yarnigan or...
He didn't want to go be on a cruise ship for however long it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know?
Although I've heard that half the cast really enjoyed that because they got to experience like a great cruise, and the other half of the cast had to do night shoots in the water and wasn't as much fun. So
Yeah.
Speaking of cruises, as I normally like to do, I like to relate any film that we're talking about to wrestling, if at all possible.
Oh, fantastic.
Chris
go.
Jericho, several years, has run a rock and wrestling rager at sea, which is on a cruise ship.
The Jera Cruise.
Yeah, that's it. With Ring of Honor or AEW wrestlers on hand, and Fozzy, his own band, playing, and perhaps a few other smaller bands. And they've been well known to come back with cholera and other archaic diseases after spending so much time at sea together. So I think Patric Fischler was probably quite wise to decline the invitation to spend so much time on a cruise liner.
Yeah, after COVID, especially, it's like
COVID
like killed cruises forever. It feels like
not advisable for your health in the immediate future, I would say.
So we're going to have a kind of loose discussion about the film before we get into some more specific stuff. But following some of the structure from 50 Miles Per Hour podcast, structure being one of the early things that you covered, what do you think about the structure of Speed 2? Do you think it has a good 3-act structure?
There's your answer.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where the first act break really is.
Yeah.
I guess one with the sort of reveal of what Geiger's up to, right? Maybe when he kills the captain or something.
Right.
Up until then, he's just this smarmy guy with weird shit in his golf clubs, and you don't really know what's going on. And then the end of the second act, I don't think there is an end to the second act. It's like all second act after that.
Yeah.
And then there's a finale out of nowhere because there's no real moment. I mean, I'm just thinking in explicitly traditional structure parameters. There's no real moment where Alex Shaw is like at his lowest, is there?
Yeah, I guess maybe when he's just been kicked overboard.
I guess that's it, yeah.
But he bounces back quite quick, doesn't he?
Annie saves him, doesn't she? She falls onto the switch to reel him back in with Tamara Morrison.
Isn't his low moment supposed to be when Annie's taken by Geiger? Isn't that where they up the stakes slightly?
I suppose so.
Or maybe his low moment is when she finds out he's not a beach cop. Right at the start.
Well, her low moment was signing on to the movie.
Yeah.
And she'll tell you that.
Yeah. Do you think that the movie is suspenseful? Obviously, a lot has been made about the fact that the boat doesn't go very fast. And the crash at the end seems to take quite a long time. It must be at least 4.5 minutes to crash.
Yeah. And you've got that guy. I love that they keep cutting to the dude with the countdown of how fast they're going. 10 knots, 9 knots. Every single number. I think that actor passed away recently too.
He did, sadly, in April, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he did, yeah. I thought
he was in a lot of UK TV shows, and he was in Rob Roy.
That is probably the dumbest part of that movie. In a movie full of dumb stuff, that they literally keep cutting back to that. I'm just like, we got it.
Even when he's on the floor.
Maybe start the countdown a little lower. Like they started at like 15 or something.
There's a lot
2
of dumb
minutes
stuff,
of this guy.
But that was the dumbest thing, and it was the least funny dumbest thing. But there's loads of dumb stuff in it that I was beside myself with laughter. Literally sitting in my cabin laughing out loud.
What's an example?
UB40 playing on the boat on cruise.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first one.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They're quite a departure from Billy Idol, aren't they? You know, in terms of
A
vibe.
chainsaw on a ship.
Yeah.
Not just one,
And a slightly bigger chainsaw that she prefers the look of.
a selection of chainsaws.
I like John Geiger's Power Glove.
Yeah. Super Nintendo accessory.
He can like close any door with this pad on his wrist. I'm just like, wow. There's this joke in Thank You for Smoking, the Jason Reitman movie, where they're talking about doing a movie, and they're like, how do we get over, being able to smoke in space? And he says, oh, we'll just come up with something, the whatever device. And so in movies, whenever there's stuff like that, I'm just like, there's a whatever device.
Yeah.
If I ever saw one.
A hand wave device. There you go. Done. The naming of the villain, John Geiger, it seems like that's ripe for several puns, but nothing ever comes. It's like, what arrived them at the name John Geiger, and why did they decide upon that name and then not have a bunch of puns ready throughout the script? Because it's a very unusual name.
Maybe it was a radiation thing and they changed it to copper later. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
He's kind of a daft Bond villain type with his.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
leeches. Yeah,
with the leeches and everything.
I thought the leeches were like one of the best touches in it. I thought that made it quite interesting.
It was different.
Yeah.
But he's basically like, fly, my pretties, as he puts them onto him. It's very arch and very camp, isn't it?
That's a line my son remembered from the movie for whatever reason. He says, you guys take care of me and I'll take care of the ship. It's so weird.
Just chatting to the leeches.
Nothing could have been further from the truth.
They'll give him a little nod as they start sucking.
I'd be curious how much of that stuff was just left over from the sort of Frankensteining of the script, because if I'm not mistaken, I think that this was a Die Hard sequel that was
Right.
Okay.
like reconfigured into Speed 2.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I think it was a Die Hard 4 concept, or maybe it was even one of the 3 concepts that they were looking at, because obviously Die Hard with a Vengeance was another script called Simon Says first, and it might have even been in the mix then. Somehow there's only one writer on it, or credited.
Jan said on your podcast that he didn't recall who came up with the idea of the boat, but I'd read somewhere else that it was him that he dreamt about a boat crashing into an island. Have you heard that?
We didn't talk about that. I'll say about Jan, he has interesting memories of things that either happened or didn't.
Right. I got that from listening, yeah.
But he is the man who is responsible for a lot of the action sequences in Speed, coming up with ideas. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did come up with, like, let's have it just crash into an island. And you know, I wouldn't imagine he came up with the boat itself, but it sounds like something he might have dreamed up.
Yeah.
There's 2 writers on it.
Yeah.
Well, there's 3 really, counting Jan. Jan has a story credit, which is probably noteworthy because I don't think he felt he got enough credit for, again, those beats that I'm talking about in Speed. So he probably made sure that was the case this time or somewhere along the way. But this guy, Randall McCormick, and then Jeff Nathanson.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming maybe Jeff wrote the original script that was ultimately finagled into Speed 2 by
That makes sense.
Jan and Randall. That's my guess. We didn't bog down in Speed 2 with Jan. I did him that favor. Yeah. But I did... I told him, I was like, we gotta have an episode about it, man. So let's talk about it a little bit.
The thing that I found interesting listening to your podcast, Chris, is I think it was one of the executives from the studio who said that Jan, I believe, came to them and said, "We've got an amazing," and the word was amazing, concept for Speed 2. And they're like, "Okay, what is it?" And he's like, "Boat." And it's just, okay, that's a wet fart of an idea.
I think that was Mark Mancina.
How is it? Okay.
I think that was Mark Mancina who said that. And then he cracked me up talking about, like, how he had this, like, endless sequence where they're trying to get on the lifeboats, you know. And Jan was like, it's got to be more exciting. And he's like, dude, I'm doing everything I can to make this sequence more exciting.
I think one thing he could have done is had less slow motion. They didn't add anything to it, and it's that
was
kind
that
of
dropped
horrible
frame rate stuff.
Dropped frame rate slow motion.
Oh my goodness!
I hate as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It just aged so badly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What I found interesting while I was looking at the budget versus the box, and I thought, well, it's not far off being a smash, really. And then I was looking. We've covered 3 1997 films. And I was looking what came out that year, and there's some heavy films coming out. Con Air, Men in Black, Face Off, Alien Resurrection, Batman and Robin, Air Force One. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream 2. So it had a very narrow gap to get in, try and make something, but it was clearly up against some really hefty challenges. And I think it was a little unfortunate that it was quite a big year for cinema.
Especially in a year with Titanic.
I deliberately left that out, yeah. And Jurassic Park Lost World as well.
Yeah, the Lost World Jurassic Park, that was one I was going to bring up, because obviously the calm before the storm part of the ending of Lost World Jurassic Park is the boat with the T-Rex crashing into the dock.
Yeah.
So who do you think did the best boat crashing into a dock? Was it Jan or was it Spielberg?
I think Jan did.
Yeah. It's actually really
straight
well
up,
done, isn't it?
I mean, he crashed it into a fucking island, man. Like, the havoc of that is outrageous.
Yeah.
And the punchline to that is good too.
I mean, as far as like the story beats surrounding the crashing of the boat, Spielberg's is better because it's like it's this ghost ship like suddenly crashing in, right? He kind of does that. He does that thing in War of the Worlds where the train goes by on fire. I think it's that movie. Yeah. It's just a haunting. Like, is that what happens? Is it on fire?
I think so.
It's on fire.
I think so.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's just this kind of ghost boat vibe in Lost World that's really cool. And then, of course, the reveal of the T-Rex inside is awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. Gaz, you said the punchline is good.
Just the punchline to the cruise liner crashing into the island is very good, with the slow dink on the bell.
Yes.
The bell. Bounces back and forth on the tip of the boat.
Yeah, that's one of those great just little moments that the Bont does.
Yeah.
And you know that kid that's with his mom or whatever, looking
That's
at
his
a
kid,
condo or something? That's his kid. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Wow.
He's really good. He sells that. It reminded me
Yeah.
again of The Lost World. The kid who's waking up his parents to say there's a T-Rex in the pool eating the dog.
That's a great shot with the chain and the doghouse hanging out of
Right.
his mouth.
What about the characterization, character arcs? I know that you said there isn't a real character arc for Jack Traven. I think he learns a little bit about himself after he loses his partner and has to kind of step up. But what do you think about the character arcs in this? Are there any?
No.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything.
Annie doesn't learn anything. She's just a bad driver at the start, at the beginning, at the end.
Oh,
Yeah.
The Naked Gun School of Driving
It's
Lessons.
just got a terrible character in this.
I mean, he comes in wanting to propose. He comes out wanting to propose.
Yeah.
They go through an intense circumstance together.
Yeah. They had an opportunity to address that, didn't they? Because they're kind of in a more serious relationship at the start, but then that all just devolves and regresses. If anything, she has the reverse of a character arc. One of the things that you spoke about on 50 miles per hour is the kind of group dynamic of the bus passengers, and they're kind of a microcosm of LA public. Do you feel like you get any sense of that in Speed 2 with the cruise line passengers, the tourists?
They sure tried.
They tried, didn't they?
Yeah.
And you've got people in there like calling camp,
Yeah.
camping it up. And my kid loves that joke where the Sandra's trying to get in. And she says, "Is there a little girl in there?" And the guy goes, "There's no girls, just big women."
Yeah, that's good.
My kid cracks up at that. I'm like, that's a very 1997 joke, son.
Yeah, don't be cracking that at school.
Yeah, really. Between that and like the guys on the, in the bridge.
Yeah.
What's his name? Django Fett.
Tamara Morrison.
Yeah.
I was really pleased to see yet another Lynch stalwart, Kimmy Robertson, who's Lucy in Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of entertainment director. They were desperate to get someone from Speed in this. Alan Ruck also declined because he was doing Spin City, but they ended up with the woman from the elevator, although you did say that you believe she's playing a different character, if she had a character.
You could have fun with it and say maybe she's that same executive, and because her whole bit in Speed 2 is she's this big smoker. And
right.
I'm like, yeah, well, maybe that experience in the elevator was so harrowing.
Exactly.
She took up smoking. And then, of course, our guy Glenn Plummer at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy. By the way, how reckless that Glenn Plummer doesn't know how to pilot the speedboat, and they just kind of let him at it. You and Bilge Ebiri were talking about Raw, which I then watched on YouTube,
Oh, God.
and I said it was like having a sustained heart attack. It's horrible to watch. So many lion attacks, and if I didn't know Melanie Griffith was still going, I'd be afraid for her life. But yeah, I feel like Jan. He seems like he doesn't care much for health and safety, as they call it,
I think he cares. I just think he thinks that the regulations could be loosened, let's say. I mean, he's not going to really put anybody in harm's way, I guess. He's not going to make anybody do anything he wouldn't do first either. Like
right,
he did some of those stunts that Keanu does just to be like, here, see? But he's also a madman, and most people aren't madmen.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was doing the casting for Speed, a few people remembered him being in 2 casts because he had fallen out of a helicopter.
Oh, wow.
Or was that what had happened? Maybe I'm getting these two things mixed up. I do know he fell out of a helicopter shooting a documentary in the Netherlands one time. That happened. Wow. I think this was just like elbow replacement stuff from carrying cameras his whole career. And he decided to do both of them at the same time because he didn't want to. He wanted to just get it over with.
That makes sense.
And I know right now Jan is getting knee replacements right now, but he's doing them one at a time, I guess, because he doesn't want to be like off his legs entirely. But yeah, that guy, he's a special breed.
Mm-hmm. I'm imagining Lee Evans in There's Something About Mary, that sort of level of being in a cast.
Picking up the pen that he's dropped. What do we think about the relationship between the leads, Annie and Alex? Is that an interesting relationship?
No. No, there's no sparks there.
There's no will they, won't they. It's replaced by did they, and might they again? Probably not.
It's more like do they have to? They're not done any favors by the script, so I don't want to slag on Jason Patric too much.
No,
because
we did The Lost Boys a few months ago, and I loved it. It's not one of those films I had nostalgia for, but seeing it again, and I thought he was great, and I think he's fine in this. Like, nobody could have done a better job in that terrible role.
It was put in a hard place, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I do know that. I mean, I've heard some people were just displeased with him, ego-wise and stuff like that. But I'm sure he was also like sort of anxious about the entire thing. I mean, this is the first movie where he's trying to be that guy.
Yeah, and he was probably pissed off, right? Because this should have been his big action role breakthrough, and he shows up and it's like, what is this movie? It's not what I thought I was signing on for, I guess.
And he's so blatantly in the shadow of another guy. Like, you're just set up for failure. Which is why I think he should be the villain in Speed 3.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Now that would be an interesting...
I've got a whole idea about that I could go into.
Well, something I wanted to ask you about is, have you ever seen Speed 3? The episode of Father Ted.
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago. And then people keep bringing it up again lately. It's big over there.
Yeah, I won't get into it because I'll go through the whole thing. Are you allowed to talk about your idea? Or
I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. It's not like I'm signed on to write it, but Disney can call my people.
Yeah.
Which is so funny. Speed is a Disney property. Annie is now a Disney princess. No, my idea, honestly, I would say like Jack Traven is retired. He's, looks like John Wick. Like his hair is long. He's grizzled. And he's long retired because he became even more of a hotshot because Harry's death like affected him so.
Yeah.
And so he just had a death wish on the squad and eventually forced retirement, got his gold watch. And I think him and Annie are friends. I think there's like it's not like they're apart in the movie. I think they should not be together, but maybe have a relationship. And, she looks after him in some sense, maybe brings him groceries from time to time. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds
just make sure he's okay. Make sure he's not killing himself.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Alex Shaw, his career has skyrocketed. He left the force. He became a politician, city council. Now he's mayor-elect. But he lives in the shadow of this guy he hates that took his girl. Or not that took his girl, but his relationship with Annie didn't work because he was in the shadow of this guy.
Yeah.
And he's got one last score to settle. Now, whatever the premise of Speed 3 is, I have no fucking idea. Like, I don't know what you do. But character-wise, I feel like all that stuff would be kind of awesome.
Well, I know one thing that he should do early on is he should place one of those remote trigger deadman switches in the hand of Mac so he can repeat his Terminator 2 breathing. That'd be a nice little Easter egg.
Fantastic.
But yeah, no, that sounds genuinely really good. I would watch that.
Should call Netflix. They'll greenlight anything.
I mean, the only thing they've got left is a plane or a train, isn't it? Really,
or an automobile.
Basically, right? I mean, my main one was maybe a plane that can't land. You can come up with a couple of action sequences there. Like they almost land before they finally get the information to the pilot, and they do a quick go around. So like they almost touch, and then they take back off, and now you're in the air. You can do a mid-air refueling.
Yeah, Die Hard 2 kind of did that.
Exactly.
I guess. The speed difference would be you'd be in the plane with the people,
which is sort of boring because the thing with Speed is like there's peril at every intersection. Like in a plane, you're going. You're just up there, you're going. Like there's no like,
oh my god, we're gonna hit a seagull.
And that's the issue. That's the issue with the boat, isn't it? Like that bus, you can see everything around it, and there's immediate tension just seeing it move down the street.
You could do like a refueling sequence, but then you're just ripping off Air Force One at that point, which did the best. Right. Mid-air.
Glass submarine.
Yep, yellow submarine.
Yeah.
We've already done that.
We have, but Speed hasn't.
You guys have.
Yeah, we have.
And then I guess like a speed train, like maybe a speed train from LA to Vegas, something like that.
It. The bullet train, the first journey of the New York to LA bullet train.
There you go. All the way across the country, yeah.
Was it Alison Lyons again? Her idea for Speed 2 was the Paris-Dakar rally. And I wish you'd asked her more about that because I was thinking, I understand the idea of what a rally is, but then what happens? What do they do? What's the peril in that rally?
Yeah, who knows? But it did get me thinking that you could. There's something there, like a cannonball run style, like cross country, like maybe New York to LA thing, like we were just talking about with the train. And, at least with that, you're on the ground and there's the potential for stopping and such. And I know that's weird with the concept of speed, but like if you're just going and there's nothing constantly affecting you, which would be the issue on a train or with a plane, like it's hard.
You have to get to the MacGuffin before the villain does, and you can't stop. So when your car's running out of gas, this time the stunt is they have to get into another vehicle to keep going. Maybe there's some reason they've got to bring some other people with them. Yeah,
you could do that with the road rally. You could borderline be Fury Road out there, like transferring from car to car and stuff like that.
Yeah, on a pole vault. Just jam it into the road.
There you go. Speed 3, dystopian future.
Speed 3, Fury Road.
And speaking of Speed 3, who would we like to see helm Speed 3? Because Jan de Bont, how long has it been since he made a movie now?
21 years. I think 2003 was the Tomb Raider movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 80 years old. My instant answer is I would love to see Jan de Bont do Speed 3.
Yeah.
And my whole thing with Speed 3 is like, don't ignore the sequel. Like I said about my stuff about Alex Shaw, like this is your way to redeem it.
Exactly.
Just bring it back around. So I'd love to see Jan do it. If not him, I don't know. I mean, there's the usual folks like Chad Stahelski, the John Wick guy, David Leitch, just the usual kind of stunt guys turned directors who are all the rage now.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I don't know. It really just depends on what kind of movie it is. And the kind of movie that I'd like it to be is a movie like Speed, which is a tight, economical, not over expensive, contained piece of work with exhilarating moments in it.
Right.
Whereas Speed 2 is obviously the opposite of that. It's a big, bloated, over budgeted movie with no compelling moments in it somehow.
Yeah.
So who is out there that can do that? Of course, I say tight economical budget, etc. But I mean, I assume that both Keanu and Sandra Bullock are getting $20 million each for that movie. So things get expensive really quick.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the reason anyone's going to see the movie. So their agents are going to be in a position to say, oh, you'll have to pay them.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any ideas about who they'd like to see directing?
Terrence Malick.
Terrence Malick, yeah.
That would be the elegiac version of Speed 3. With lots of shots of cornfields and sunsets and lens flares.
And it would still feel like more of a thrill ride than Speed 2.
Michael Winner's Ghost.
Michael Winner's Ghost.
Yeah. Calm down, dear.
Did he do one of the Death Wish movies?
Yeah.
Michael Winner did all of them.
Yeah, did he? There you go. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, the guy that did Minari is doing this Twister movie. So it can really be anybody.
What about Sam Raimi? Someone like that. Someone's go crazy with it.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. He can do the schlocky kind of version of it almost.
Yeah. His kinetic camera work would work well in a Speed type scenario.
Fincher.
Funny you should say that. When we get to the plan section, there might be a little Fincher connection.
Oh, interesting.
Boing.
Get the Metal Gear Solid ring.
Yeah. Ring.
Well, what do you think about the relationship between the heroes and the villain in this one? Because one thing I always found really interesting about Speed is I would have expected Jack, or no, maybe Harry more so, to have a shred of sympathy for Howard, because they're young cops. He's a retired cop. He got shafted, not thanked for his career. He kind of has a legitimate reason, not for what he does, but for wanting some kind of compensation. But they don't. They both think he's the worst scum. But again, you've got ostensibly sympathetic villain in Geiger because he is ill, and it is the fault of the company he worked for. But the relationship between the leads and the villain seems very lacking to me. And you get this mention that Annie has chatted to Geiger. She tells Alex that his name, so they've obviously had a chat. And it's weird to me that you never see that. But do you think that the movie's successful in conveying any relationship between them?
Don't they meet up at the beginning? Don't they bump into each other when he's
You see them in a bar.
They bump into each other, but
there's no names.
It's just a bump. And then the next time he's discussed, she speaks to Alex as if she's had a good sort of long chat with Geiger, but you don't get to see that.
I mean, it's a kind of movie that probably has a lot of scenes on the cutting room floor, so who knows? No, there's not much there. I mean, it's sort of instantly antagonistic in a way too, like instantly familiarly antagonistic, if that makes sense. Like when Geiger's like looking at him on the screen when Alex goes to his cabin to find him, and right before he blows up the cabin, there's just like this weird familiarity that has not been earned between the two of them at all. So yeah, that's bad. It'd be better if there was maybe some kind of a history there, but obviously not too many people were thinking too hard on this movie. Yeah, it's pretty thin.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the cutting room floor, as you mentioned on 50 miles per hour, we sadly lost editor John Wright. Do you think that he could have put some tension into this? Do you think that this is a well-edited film? Because I feel there's not a lot of tension in it for me, but I wonder if that is something that could have been edited in.
I don't think so, because I'm sure Jan got everything that he would have needed to make any kind of a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much coverage and material you can get with this premise to begin with, because he could get a ton of shots to cut to in Speed.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff on that bus, tons of stuff around the bus, tons of angles on their stunts. But with this one, I mean, one of the most supposedly suspenseful moments is her finding a chainsaw to get these people out of there. I mean, they're just these sort of flat moments on their face,
Yeah.
So I don't know that you could really cover them anymore to make them more exciting and give an editor more footage.
Yeah.
I mean, in the first one, there's that scene where there's someone walking across the street with a trolley.
Mm-hmm.
Cans. It's full of cans.
And even that, the tension is there immediately. You've got that knot in your stomach. Ooh, there's just no equivalent at sea, is there?
And something else that's weird is the whole, getting back to the sympathetic villain thing. It's almost like maybe they tried to go there because he gives them an opportunity to take everybody off the boat.
Right.
Which is just weird.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's a choice that he makes. You've got 15 minutes to get everybody off, and then he's going to set this thing on a crash course. And all under the guise of stealing this jewelry in the vault. That's something else I don't get.
That was tacked on, wasn't it?
Like, do cruise ships have vaults of jewelry in them? What is this?
That's one of the things I was going to ask about the passengers, actually. In Speed, these are bus passengers, and, they're working class people, and it's very relatable.
Yeah.
But everybody in this is on a cruise. Do you kind of lose that connection to them? And maybe that's why I didn't really care about what was going to happen to them.
Yeah, there's that, and there's just the sense that Speed builds a community out of the characters. They need to work together to do things, and
right.
They don't really do that here.
No.
There's no, we need this person to have this expertise to do this thing, and all of that was even more played up in original drafts of Speed, where each of them had their kind of expertises.
Even the one cool character in this, the deaf girl, all of her action takes place removed from everybody else. So there's no sense of them working together because he doesn't know what she's done to get out of the situation she was in. It's all completely from nobody's POV but hers, which is kind of an odd choice, I felt.
And then it ends on that weird beat where she's like love struck. It's
yes.
Like, didn't need that.
No.
I'm not sure if that was as cute as others might have thought.
No.
Anyway. That's Speed 3. Now she goes after Annie. She's mad at Annie for taking Alex away. There you go.
It's like the mythical kill the bride, kill Annie.
Do we have anything positive to say about Speed 2? I think a couple of things. I really like the arrangement of the Fox fanfare at the start and how it blends into the theme music.
I can't remember how it worked.
It's very ominous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a new arrangement of the classic Fox fanfare. You can tell it's not the regular one, and it winds down ominously into the theme.
Ripples into the sea.
Yeah.
Oh, I do vaguely.
It's quite nicely done.
It's very funny as well. Sometimes it's so funny because some of the jokes are really outdated even for 1997, and some of them are just like proper what on earth were they thinking sort of jokes, but it's funny. Some of the stuff is not written as a joke and it's still funny, but other stuff is, and I enjoyed it for that reason alone. It's, I would say we were saying about the acts before, there's 1, 2, and there is, to me, the third act is when the cruise ship glances off the tanker and heads towards St. Martin. And that's the third act there, because that changes. And then all of a sudden, the movie just goes completely, right, let's throw the rule book out the window. Let's just have at it with all sorts of crazy jokes and out-of-date things and stuff like that.
It's odd, though, isn't it? Because it does go on for quite a bit after that.
Yeah.
And that was a complaint people had about Speed as well, I remember, is that it felt like it ended when they got off the bus, but then it kept going. I mean, personally, I love everything that comes after that. But yeah, you don't get a moment of catharsis like that. Like the triumphant music that plays when they come out from under that bus, that moment feels like such a release from the bus element that it kind of sets you up for a fresh finale after that.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a moment like that in Speed 2, I don't think.
Not really.
And there's no big set piece in the middle, the bus jump. You don't get a moment like that in this.
I suppose that they're aiming for it in opening the ballast doors, but it doesn't play very well.
No, it's not very exciting.
It feels like that's the major action sequence to be the fulcrum to push it to the finale, but it's just, it's not very excitingly staged.
Yeah.
Just as a concept, I did like the idea of feeding cord and then a thicker cord and then building up to the big cable to get it to go through the propellers.
Yeah.
Just as a kind of set piece concept, I thought that was interesting. I also like the anchor falling on the guy's car at the end. That's kind of good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of funny stuff in that crashing sequence. Like I love the woman on the payphone, like looking back. Like that shot is like hilarious.
The guy who's driving the small vehicle and he just jumps out of it and lets it crash into the front of the ship. It's quite funny. I think what I felt at the opening, at least, is that it felt like Speed, at least at first. After Twister, which still feels like a Yondu Barbie film, but it feels like a different beast to Speed. Speed 2 felt like I was back in Speed territory, for at least for a bit anyway. And I think the visual storytelling is, as you would expect, good and clear. So I think that those are the positives that I would have to say about it.
Although I do remember, what were those dudes in the truck stealing? Because it seemed like a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
For some petty thievery or whatever was going on there.
DVD players, was it?
Yeah.
It was just like, good Lord, man.
It is overkill for whatever they had done.
Like, they've got all the cops out there. It's like it's a big mission they're undertaking, and he's in contact with them on the bike and stuff. I'm just like, this is weird. Joe Morton. Somehow this guy is this dude's boss as well.
Yeah, maybe he wanted to get away from Jack as well. Or maybe, like you say, Jack has been forcefully retired.
And of course, as I said on the show, Joe Morton said he'd do it if they did not include his name in the credits.
Right.
Which is just like, fair enough.
Yeah. I feel like that stunt sequence in particular felt like it was probably made for Keanu.
Yeah.
Because he would have ridden his own bike, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a good character entrance, if nothing else, isn't it, for Jason Patric? Just jumping towards the screen sideways, rather like the car at the start of the original Speed.
Yeah.
Blasting into the frame. Quite iconic in its way, but then it's just a shame that the follow-up isn't there.
Yeah, and it does immediately invite comparisons that he probably didn't want. So.
True.
And then somehow Annie ends up there on the location, like she, there she is. It's like, what?
Yeah. Quite the contrivance there.
Yeah,
it's like a meet cute for two people who have already met some time ago.
Just when she discovers he's a cop too, right?
Yeah,
she knows he's a cop.
She
thinks that he's a beach cop.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
She thinks that he's like David Hasselhoff or something. Or was Hulk Hogan a beach cop in that TV series?
Thunder in Paradise. Oh yeah,
Thunder in Paradise. Wow.
What a show!
That's what a beach cop is.
Quite a pull there. I remember the episode with Sting as I think his name was Hammerhead.
Yes.
Wow. The wrestler Sting. No face paint.
I think Vader and Sid were in that one as well, if I remember.
I'm sure everybody was.
Yeah.
Was like, get in, brother.
Well, we usually do favourite moments, lines, and sequences. Does anybody have any?
Oh, there's loads of favourite lines.
All right, let's start with Adam.
Well, my favourite sequence is like the exposition as the boat's heading towards St. Martin. They set the scene, don't they? And of course, cue the steel drums. There's people scuba diving, selling bananas and stuff like that. And I was just like, I was howling laughing. And it was just like setting it all. I was killing myself.
What about a favourite line of dialogue?
There's loads. I've written loads down. But the one that stands out to me, which is funny for all the wrong reasons, and I call the character Jar Jar Binks' girlfriend. And it's the one. She goes, her line is, "Me not see them, me think they're gone." Yeah,
she doesn't speak like that at any other point. It's so strange.
Yeah, what do they think is going on in the Bahamas? And
honestly,
such?
I was crying. It's so wrong, but I was like, I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody who lives around St. Martin was mortified and like.
I was after I'd stopped laughing, I was ashamed of myself.
I know there's one that I really like, which is John Geiger screaming at Annie, saying, "Come back, you're my hostage."
Yeah, I think
That's the way he said it. Come back, you're my hostage.
Yeah. He says to her before they get on the thing as well, "Can't let you go now. You're my little hostage."
It's like he's like in love with the idea. Oh, I'm this guy. I'm the guy that has a hostage.
He's so funny after they get off. The funniest moment is when Jason Patric catches up with him after harpooning his airplane and winching himself in. And he comes in through the door and says hi to Annie. And Willem Dafoe just looks at him like, oh shit. Doesn't try and do anything.
He's got a gun as well, isn't he? He shot him straight in the face.
He's just like, uh-oh, that guy's caught up with it.
The jig is up.
Ben, you look like you might have a favourite moment or line there.
I was just looking through my moments. I think the moment I laughed hardest at was the attempt at slapstick comedy with a chainsaw.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
pretty amusing.
The thing is, Sandra Bullock's so great at comedy. I love her so much.
She doesn't
but-
stop trying throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
I think she does her best with quite a difficult script.
Yeah, I think she really does.
Oh, she never stops trying. The movie fails her utterly, and in in obvious ways, but in ways that when you just look at the character, it's so not Annie anymore.
Yeah.
No.
It's somebody else. Like,
It's
this
a
is a
bimbo.
damsel in distress.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
horrible. They could have made her the hero easily, and she could have been going on. And you think, oh, it's just this ditzy girl again, sort of thing, rubbish driver. But all of a sudden, she's this hard ass hero. But they didn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, who is she after that encounter with Payne, or who should she be after that experience with Jack? She should have been
Hardened.
well, not
by
the
it all.
person we get in
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
No, she should have been a lot tougher. And yeah, unfortunately, it just wasn't the movie it could have been for that reason.
Yeah.
you do wonder though if fully divorced from Speed, if this wasn't a return to that character, would we view this film more sympathetically, or would it just have less cachet even because it's not Speed?
I'd have been straight to video, wouldn't it?
It's goofy as hell though, and what Roger Ebert seemed to love about it was that quality.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Bond movie, right? Like Jason Patric harpooning that airplane, like I said, that wouldn't have happened in the first Speed. No way.
No.
Where you don't get harpoons on buses.
Yeah,
Well,
that is very,
Sadly.
very Bond. Yeah, you're
But I
right.
mean, a moment like that, it's just
Yes.
so goofy.
No.
Speed, although it is not, does feel grounded in some respects. It has like verisimilitude, right? Once you put into the idea of that world, the things that happen in the plot don't seem that outlandish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Speed 2 doesn't really buy that. Or
No.
maybe it would have if it wasn't following on from Speed.
Yeah.
There's no peaks and valleys in Speed 2. It's just a straight line is the problem.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a slow, straight line.
35 knots. So
Yeah, there's nothing that just like is pulling you along. There's nothing. You say outlandish. To me, there's nothing outlandish in the sense there's nothing unbelievable, because there's nothing like. I mean, the harpoon thing is one thing, but like
Yeah.
there's nothing. There's still that sense of, okay, he's doing a lot of stuff for real here, and this stuff feels kind of real, but it's all in service of something that's so flat that it doesn't really wow you for that.
yeah.
Gaz, did you have a favourite moment or line?
Not really any lines. What I've written down. Oh no, I have got a favourite line. I've just been looking at my notes as I've been speaking. It is when all the engines go down on the Seaborn Legend, and it's played as a big dramatic moment. Sort of zoom ins on various characters, and there's the Scottish guy. He's prominently featured, and he just shouts down the phone very emphatically, "I don't care!"
It's a reverse Star Trek moment. Scotty's on the bridge shouting down at engineering.
Made me laugh.
I have one line that I love on a meta level, which is, as the plane is taking off, Geiger says, "Almost at speed." And I thought, yeah, that's this movie. Almost at speed.
Almost. That's it.
But not quite.
I also like. I literally just Googled Speed 2 lines.
Oh, we do that often.
Refresh myself, and there's this line that I actually legitimately kind of snicker at in the movie whenever they're dancing, and she says, "This night seems almost too perfect," and he says, "Want me to step on your toes?"
Yeah.
I just think that's hilarious. Just
Yeah.
Joss Whedon wrote some stuff for this movie,
Oh, did he?
and it's one of those that I'm like, I wonder if that's a Joss Whedon line because it just feels like punchy enough to maybe.
Oh, he did for Speed 2 as well. I knew that he'd doctored the first movie, but I didn't realize he'd worked on Speed 2.
Well, doctor is a strong word for Speed 2. He probably, Jan called him and said, I need a line for this circumstance.
Right.
Got. And he said, oh, what about this? That's probably what it was more than anything. And same thing on Twister. He wrote some dialogue, some bits in that.
All right.
There's a line, and I was watching Twister one night, and there's the line where he says, a regular man spends his life avoiding intense situations, and then Phil Hoffman says, Repo Man spends his life getting into tense situations. And then I watched Repo Man, which I had never seen.
Right.
The 80s movie.
Yeah. Emilio Estevez?
Yeah, Repo Man spends his life getting into tense situations. And so I was like, wait. And so I emailed Joss Whedon, and I was like, was that you in Twister? And he was like, oh, yeah, that was me.
Yeah. That's very Joss Whedon. Yeah.
I was like, that had to be. It's just so pop culture-y.
The Diabolical podcast is all about the villain. So what do you think about the character of John Geiger and Willem Dafoe in the role?
I don't know whether it's the sort of after knowledge, because this was my first viewing of Speed 2. Don't know whether it's the after knowledge of Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin and in The Lighthouse and various other films Lars von Trier's film, the name of which I forget. I've seen him playing bad guys, but it just kind of felt like a lightweight version of what was to come. And it also reminded me of, I'm sure many people have said this before, and this is an entirely unoriginal thought. It reminded me of Klaus Kinski.
Yeah.
The kind of the facial grimaces that he was pulling quite frequently. I would imagine he had him in mind.
At sort of 14, 15 in 1997, I didn't really know who Willem Dafoe was. It's only in later years that I've seen things like Wild at Heart. And I think there was a lot of, as there was for the first Speed, a lot of coverage on UK TV about, the excitement of this thing coming out. There was a show on BBC, I think it was, called How Do They Do That? That featured the mechanics of the best stunt before Speed even hit theatre screens in the UK. Yeah. So I was really excited for Speed coming out. And they did the same thing with Speed 2, and they showed the boat crash and everything. But yeah, I do remember distinctly thinking, well, I knew who Dennis Hopper was when that came out, because, he was in Super Mario Bros. I didn't know who Willem Dafoe was.
You've never seen Platoon before that? You've never seen Platoon?
Not at 14, 15. I saw it maybe a year or two later.
I remember seeing that, and then seeing he was the baddie in this one. I was like, oh, all right, so he's still going, because I couldn't remember seeing him in another film.
I'm trying to think of when I would have first seen him. Because I remember he was definitely an actor whose name I knew.
Yeah.
Because I remember my mom and dad maybe mentioning him for something, but I'm looking at his filmography to see if anything stands out. I feel like I knew about him from Body of Evidence. Not that I had seen Body of Evidence. But I was very aware as a young man about what Body of Evidence. Yeah. Like the NC-17 thing.
Heard of it.
And also, another, I hadn't seen Wild at Heart yet, but there's another Lynch.
His teeth in that, my God.
Yeah, incredible.
Maybe I was vaguely aware of his Jesus.
Right.
He had been in Clear and Present Danger.
Okay, yeah, I might have seen that at the time.
I don't remember him being in that.
Yeah.
I take it he's the bad guy in that.
No, he's not, no.
Is he not?
No, he's not the bad guy. No,
okay.
He's like a big part of the like, when the movie turns into Commando in the third act, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hadn't really seen, I definitely hadn't seen Platoon yet, or like Streets of Fire, To Live and Die in LA, all that stuff.
Mississippi Burning.
And then after that, even, it seems like it was a while before. He's had such a weird career, man.
Oh, yeah. Obviously he hit big in Spider-Man, but then after that, all the Wes Anderson stuff, he really kind of made a name for himself in quote-unquote indie films that aren't really indie. And Shadow of the Vampire, we were all huge fans of.
I had seen that. I was in film school when that came out.
That's great.
There's just not a lot to the character, is there? There's the makings of an interesting Bond villain with the leeches, but that's really about it. The copper poisoning is kind of a what idea? What's that all about? And the end goal is very bland.
What is the goal?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Just to crash it and get away with that jewelry?
Yeah.
I think he's supposed to be getting one over, isn't he, on the people that sacked him?
Yeah, he wants to crash the boat to get back at the
revenge
company. And the jewelry, I think he just wants because he wants to live his remaining years in luxury.
Well, leeches can't be cheap.
Well, yeah, I did look up copper poisoning, and effectively, I mean, it's difficult to contract anyway. You have to have a lot of exposure to it, and you would be symptomatic before diagnosis, and you could probably get it reversed. But when it is lethal, it's because you get essentially organ failure, and I don't think you'd be able to hijack a cruise liner and kill the captain, etc., etc.
Well, also, I remember noting this. He said it's a terminal illness, copper poisoning, computer magnetic fields. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here with a computer on my lap
Right.
every day.
Yeah.
So is this a thing that I need to be concerned about?
You want to get yourself checked for copper poisoning?
In Speed 2 Cruise Control, dying of disgruntled former cruise company employee John Geiger hijacks the autopilot system he designed on the Seabourn Legend and programs it to crash into an oil tanker as revenge for the copper poisoning he contracted while working for the company. His plans are scuppered when a passenger and policeman who is way, way out of his jurisdiction alters the course of the ship, causing it to scrape the side of an oil tanker before crashing into a marina. Repeating Howard Payne's fatal mistake of taking America's sweetheart Annie hostage, Geiger is then tracked down by Alex, who rescues Annie and leaves Geiger's seaplane to crash into the oil tanker's mast, impaling the aircraft and leaving the villain hoist by his own petard, stuck and unable to get free of the explosion he aimed to cause. But what did the Panel of Peril make of the scheme?
He clearly didn't seem to think it through. He seemed to be making it up as he went along. You know, you're my hostage. Come back. Like just stuff like that. Like it's so funny to me. Like don't give them a chance to take your hostages off the boat. Like
Right.
and don't and have a better plan than just whatever jewelry is in there. He's not going to live off his rest of his days with a couple of diamond necklaces, is he? Like there needed to be like a more of a heist element. Find the cruise ship that's got like, I don't know, something else on it.
Elton John.
Or it's
Yeah, there you go.
transporting weapons-grade plutonium to somewhere.
The Jarrah Cruise.
Sure.
I mean, Howard Payne just wipes the floor with this guy. Like,
Yeah.
Howard Payne knew exactly how much he wanted. Exactly how much he wanted, by the way. It wasn't a round number.
Right.
Although there was a reason for the number that he had. It was,
Oh, I earned it.
it was the amount that I think that he knew that the police had in their pension fund. So he
Right.
wanted that specific amount. Yeah, I just think he needed to aim higher in general. Just if you're gonna do this thing, man, go for it. Do it for real. And don't be so accessible. Like he's running around the boat doing shit. Like eventually, I guess he assumed that he was gonna get everybody off the boat and not have to deal with some police officer like Alex Shaw that would be running around too. But I don't know. Like do this a little more remotely.
That's a good point. Did he even need to be on the boat if he knows all the
He
systems?
didn't really.
Yeah, like just do whatever you got to do to get on the ship and put your equipment in place, and then get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a transmitter, didn't he? So maybe it has range. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, then do this in 2024 and not 1997.
Yeah.
Play the long game.
Wait a little longer for technology to catch up with
Hold
your,
on for 20
your whole
years.
bit.
After
Yeah.
you've died of copper poisoning. Bequeath your plan to your successor.
Pray that they don't inherit your condition.
Like Spider-Man's radioactive semen. He's got copper poisoned. What about the planning ahead of having a seaplane ready? And that
Yeah,
kind
it
of
can't. It doesn't feel like that's going to happen, and then all of a sudden it's there, isn't it? It's just like, okay, right.
Hey, Adam, how many villains do you think there were in this?
How many villains?
Yeah.
Just the one.
Oh, you're a Geiger counter, are you?
There you
Hey,
go.
he's
There's
done
the
it.
pun.
He's nailed it.
That's the pun.
He's done what
Yeah.
the
You
You
screenwriters
just laid
couldn't.
out for that one, man. Like he could not resist.
What about this one? Oh, you've got a problem with the way the company dealt with your severance, do you? Why don't you go and speak to HR, Geiger?
Oh,
good.
that's better than mine.
Hey, oh, come on.
Jesus.
I have no Geiger puns.
What about this one? You're such a bad person. You're making me really angry, guy. Grrr.
Oh.
Oh,
Pretty good.
And
good.
it's over.
Before we go any further, a shout out to our listeners. We hope you've enjoyed this run of special episodes as much as we have. And you can show your love by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. It would be rude to our guest if you didn't. And while you're at it, leave a review for 50 miles per hour pod 2. You can run your cable through our propellers on socials at Diabolical Pod and dive into the depths of our bilge at our website, diabolicalpod.com.
This is the part of the show where the Panel of Peril compete for the title of Most Diabolical. We'll each vote for our favourites, and at the end, the person with the most votes will be crowned the winner of this special episode. But do remember, you cannot vote for yourself, you salty babies. Our task this week is to get revenge against the cruise liner company that fired us and left us with deadly copper poisoning. And let's start with Kris.
Oh, what would I have done differently? It's all so bad from the beginning. I would have just done something completely different. Like I would have come up with some other plot. I would have thrown a hot plate against the wall. I think he should have aimed higher. He should have been a real Bond villain, like not one cruise ship, multiple cruise ships, and set them on a crash course for each other. So you've got like cruise ships all over the Atlantic that are suddenly turning towards each other and converging on the same spot, and they're just gonna crash, and then make it actually happen. But obviously, you get most people off the boats and stuff. But so you got to have that moment happen because it would be badass. But that would be very Bondy, I think.
That would be great.
You're desperately close to my plan there, Kris.
If they all hit at exactly the same time, going at the same speed, just stop.
Yeah, there you go. They just touch.
I think the budget might have spiraled out of control there, potentially.
Oh yeah, that might have been a problem.
They could have filmed the one boat just coming in at multiple angles with a locked camera and then just composite
They could just use that really high quality CG. One of my notes here is the CG is worse than the Labyrinth Owl.
Okay, I'm going to summarize that as hijack multiple boats and crash them into each other. And if you can, don't be on the boat.
There you go.
Well then, next, let's hear from Adam.
I've set the bar now. Quite low.
Well, I can go lower. Geiger, instead of getting leeches to suck the copper out of him, has another idea to turn the copper poisoning to his advantage. After chatting to a scientist on an internet chat room, Geiger buys an old X-ray machine off the fledgling bric-a-brac cum car boot sale site eBay. Geiger sits at home giving himself more and more doses of radiation in an attempt to remove the copper from within him so he can be healthy again, and to also irradiate some burgers, which he will sell to company executives from a burger van outside the headquarters to give them cancer. However, this doesn't kill the copper or remove it, but has unforeseen consequences. Geiger obtains the ability to control the copper in his blood and become Copper Man, the man with the will of copper. At first, he just excretes all the copper into a pile of copper pennies that he plans to use on the penny nudgers on the pier, just for a bit of fun to cheer himself up. However, he discovers that he can reabsorb the copper into his body and use it in various different ways. He quickly devises a plan. He goes into hiding and begins his preparations. A few months later, he sends an email from a fake identity that Geiger himself has died. He also states that when he died, he'd forgiven the company for what they'd done and was just happy, and his dying wish was sending the company a present to show there were no hard feelings. A large wooden crate arrives at the cruise control HQ, and when it is opened, inside is a life-size copper statue of John Geiger, with a sports jacket thrown over his shoulder and a big cheesy grin on his face, just like in the film. The plaque at his feet bears the inscription, John Geiger. He was a genius, but he also forgave people because he was nice. What company doesn't want a copper statue in their lobby? So they immediately place him near the giant fountain, and they kind of feel a bit guilty, but not that guilty as they're all a bit richer now, and they laugh that he's dead and poor. But really he's not, and he can hear everything they say. One evening, when the board of executives are having a late night meeting, all the power goes out. Geiger, some months before, had infiltrated the office and used some of his technical skills to hack into the place. When the power comes back on, they're all dead with their throats cut. However, nobody will suspect a copper statue in a casual stance and a smile on his face. So you see, he gets his revenge and doesn't need any money, because the blood of your enemies is priceless. He later becomes a plumber, fixing the pipework of gas boilers, kitchen sinks, and toilets for sweet old ladies. And he also hooks up with a few of them because he's lonely. Not such a bad man after all. Ah.
Lovely.
Wow.
Yeah. I told you, Chris, that our plans were not all that.
You weren't expecting that?
No, that's incredible. I feel schooled.
About science, we've learned a lot about science, I feel. How X-rays work.
Electromagnetic radiation from X-rays managed to pool all the copper together in his body so he can command it. Bend to my will, I tell you.
He could have just sprayed himself like one of those dickheads that stands outside and really
It's
still.
the real thing.
statues.
It's the real thing, though.
I
He's
like
a real
those
thing.
guys.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah?
So,
Of course you do.
Okay.
Of course you do. If anyone would like a living statue, it's you.
they've got like little chairs up the leg of their trousers, haven't they?
Yeah.
Adam,
Yes.
how long has he stood there as this copper statue?
Days, week.
Does he not need the toilet?
No.
Excretes copper, doesn't he?
He just excretes copper, and it just turns into more
He's a
copper.
man of commitment.
Yeah, it just turns into more copper. His poo is copper. His wee is copper. He is Copper Man. The man with a will of copper.
All right.
And also a willy of copper.
No further questions from me.
All
You sewed it all up.
Defeated.
Okay, then let's next hear from Ben, please.
John Geiger boards the seaman legend as in the film, but instead he puts his mastery of technology to use on the entertainment deck. First, he expertly hacks the ship's fancy digital karaoke system, ensuring that his name is called for the first song. He also makes sure the audio is piped through all of the ship's lounges, decks, and cabins, which he then locks remotely. He opens with Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, and the crowd whoop and cheer in delight until, right after the first chorus, Geiger flicks a switch on his wrist computer that enables a macro that automatically inserts a 25-minute instrumental, which he proceeds to play along to on kazoo. Once the ordeal is over, Geiger sits back down at his table, only for his name to be called again for the next song. He stands up and points to himself, feigning surprise, and then with an impish grin, he shrugs his shoulders and takes the stage. Next up, he does Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, but instead of the familiar smooth baritone, the passengers are insulted by Geiger meowing all the lyrics. And so it continues, with Geiger called up for every single song. Starting Shout with a robust, well, you know you make me wanna, only to stop it immediately after and hit restart. I like that bit best. That's the best bit, he declares. Each of the 15 times he does it. He croons under the boardwalk, mumbling through the verses, only to belt out the choruses, but singing Deardy Bodo instead. He mouth guitars a solo to Stairway to Heaven and peppers shitloads of oh yeahs and ooh babies throughout the Two Princes before diving into painful white guy scatting with wide-eyed abandon. Eventually, he'll explain his demands over the PA, which he says must be met, or he'll be forced to change the words to Anastasia's well-known hit, "To That Don't Impress My Clutch."
All right.
Anastasia or Shania Twain?
Yeah.
Is he getting revenge on the cruise liner here, or just pissing off the passengers?
I think he's gonna ask for money.
It's like John Geiger as the Joker.
So that's his revenge. He's gonna ask for a lot of money to shut up.
I think he would have he would have been lynched after that, so I don't think he would get any revenge.
Yeah. All right. Well,
No questions on the logistics there.
But I thought the genius was meowing Rick Astley.
yeah.
I could immediately hear it in my head.
most of those things I listed, I've actually heard in karaoke over here, so that's why.
Right, yeah, of
God.
course.
It's
yeah.
all
I
from
would
experience.
pay to hear that. Yeah.
Okay, well, next let's hear from Gaz.
I'm the first one brave enough to attempt a Willem Dafoe voice. So
Oh.
brace yourselves for this bad
Ooh.
boy. It's going to be
Alright.
bad.
Okay.
Prepare
All right,
yourselves.
girls. Let's see what you got.
Well, that's good. You should have done yours.
I'm Capper Man.
If you are hearing this, then I am already dead due to owie. My kappa poisoning is really hurting today. Ow! Hopefully my leeches can stave off the kappa poisoning with their wonderful magical healing properties long enough that I might enact my evil scheme, the reasons for which you will doubtlessly be aware of. I plan to hijack the Seaborn Legend cruise liner that uses my navigation system. That part is quite obviously foolproof and highly entertaining. Then, assuming that my delightful jar of leeches have worked their magic, I will hack my own operating system and throw the vessel off course. Oh, the copper smarts! Yes, I will throw the vessel off course and away from the safe waters of the shipping lanes into dangerous territory. The dangerous territory of the glamorous World Powerboat Championships, sponsored by Red Bull. You'll need wings to get out of this one, dipshits! If any of the passengers try to put up a fight, I will cross that bridge when I come to it, and not before. Merrily they speed along, at high speed, mind you, in their powerboats, blissfully unaware that I have packed the secret compartment that all powerboats secretly have, and you are not aware of, with explosives. Damn this copper. I shall guide the liner into the path of the competitors, who will be completely unable to avoid such a large and slow-moving target. One by one, they shall smash into the Legend's hull, the resulting explosions sinking her to the ocean floor, and which I will consider sufficient revenge for my firing / copper poisoning. / And, as this will involve lots of vehicles traveling very fast, it should be quite exciting to boot. I do not regret the loss of life that this will cause. My only regret is that I have deadly copper poisoning.
Oh,
Wow.
My only
that was
regret
pretty
is
good.
that I have bonitis.
Well, Willem Dafoe is from Wisconsin, not Yonkers. Just to...
Yeah.
I was going to say
That
you
went
went
Copper poisoning.
the whole.
I can do a
That's
generic
nuts.
American accent, and that's about it.
Yeah, we all sound like that.
you strayed into a bit of Kinky John at points there as well.
It sounded like the receptionist from Beetlejuice in the ghost land with the slit throat.
Chris, you won't have heard this, and may I suggest maybe you never should, but Gaz's Dennis Hopper impersonation was just a Yorkshire accent.
Yeah.
Like Sean Astin in Lord of the Rings, kind of accent.
Yeah. Well, I assume nobody has any challenges for Gaz, so I shall bring us home. It is the opening titles of Speed 2, styled as 2-peed, i.e. the number 2 followed by the word peed, and a nightmarish montage of hand-developed home movies, credits scratched into the celluloid, plays to the moribund tones of Nine Inch Nails' The Great Below. As the scenes play out, it becomes clear that we are watching John Geiger prepare for his great work, his final revenge against the Seaborn cruise line. He meticulously excises portions of newspaper with a scalpel, crafting his own pages and binding them by hand. Geiger has spent months putting all this together, but it will be worth it, as, sitting amongst the piles of discarded tabloids, he is certain he has pulled off the greatest feat of extreme couponing the world has ever seen. Cut to the present day, and Geiger is making a mockery of Seabourn's promotional campaigns, using his knowledge of every loophole to stack up discounts, 2-for-1s, and kids go free deals to buy up dozens of tickets for cents on the dollar. Once aboard, Geiger finds himself one of just 3 passengers travelling with Seabourn Legend, and with the other guest needs easily attended to, the normally overworked crew are more than happy to accept his offer to let them stay in his many cabins. In the evenings, Geiger and the crew join the impossibly beautiful woman and her boyfriend, Constable Cardboard, in the events lounge, where they gorge themselves on shrimp cocktail, throwing the tales at a visibly distressed UB40. They swap tales about the horrendous working conditions aboard cruise liners, including 14-hour, 7-day work weeks, cramped, squalid living spaces, and having to purchase their own uniform, not to mention the hazardous potential of seafaring. To not long before Geiger has almost everyone on side, barring, of course, the fascist copper. But by this point, Annie has grown tired of Alex, and without a cute kid to bring out his soft side, he spends much of the trip sulking by himself. When the ship reaches harbour, the crew and Annie have unanimously agreed to fill out dozens of negative feedback cards about the conditions on board, and together they work to financially cripple Seabourn. Annie gets back with Jack, and Geiger gives her away at their wedding, leaving them all his best coupons in his will. Also, I forgot to say, there's a bit where Geiger beats Shaw in a peeing contest off the side of the ship, hence 2 peed. So it's 7, but it's speed. 2.
Wow. With coupons.
Extreme couponing to make it,
Okay,
an action movie.
Yeah.
You need the tension there, or it's just not going to work, is it?
I initially thought that perhaps he was going to set Alex Shaw and perhaps Annie up to be paedophiles, but I was incorrect in
and then murder them
assessment.
in a horrendous way.
Well, it's one way to go, isn't it?
Yes.
When would the golden shower happen? At the end of the second act?
Yeah,
At the end of the first act? I missed somebody's lowest point, so probably the end of the second act.
Yeah, roughly where the bus jump would have come in the first movie. That's where they have the peeing contest.
There you go.
And oh boy, does the excitement ramp up.
I just picture the score in my head.
It's
It's a lot of strings.
Highbrow.
Those plans were leech-suckingly diabolical. First, we had Chris's boat battle royale. Next, we had Adam's Trojan Defoe, the copper hero, and radioactive cancer burgers plan. Then we had Ben's Sour Caroline karaoke kazoo torture. Then we had Gaz's Red Bull Power Race Gauntlet. And finally, we had my Extreme Severin style scheme. But who will get the votes? There can only be one winner, or possibly a 5-way tie, the so-called Belgian pretzel. So with that, if we could all cast our votes, please. Adam looks ready. Adam, who have you voted for?
Well, I could totally sympathise with the pain inflicted in this plan, so I voted for Ben.
All right.
Oh.
So then, Ben, who have you voted for?
Well, I voted for the performance, and what an accent, Gaz. I also think that the mini speedboats zooming around would be quite a good action film.
It does sound more exciting. Well then, Gaz, who did you vote for?
Well, circle jerk complete. I voted for Ben.
Oh.
Okay, and Chris?
I wrote mine on a dirty napkin, which is what I had handy.
That seems appropriate.
Yeah, that's how they hammered out the plot for this Speed 2. I mean, just because I want to see the actor put through whatever that was going to be, I went with Adam.
Yes.
I voted for Gaz. So
Yeah, so Gaz wins.
the only thing I know is that I didn't get any votes, so that's all that matters to me.
But I got the vote of somebody who's written a draft for Speed 3, so,
Yeah.
I wrote a tweet with that draft in it anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, don't take away my time. Don't take away that from me, okay? The man who wrote Speed 3 has voted for me.
There you go.
Okay. That will do us for another batch of evil schemes, but like Annie Porter, we just keep finding ourselves back at the wheel of yet another out-of-control vehicle. So look out for more guest episodes in the future. Once again, we'd like to thank our special guest, Kris Tapley, for taking the time to join us and share his evil scheme too. So Kris, we give the floor to you. Where can the Peril Pals hear more of your diabolical thoughts?
Well, 50 miles per hour is the podcast. Twitter at 50MPH pod. We've got our big finale coming up June 10th, which is the 30th anniversary of Speed, and the entire point of the podcast was to build to that over a year. And I'm also on Twitter, Kris Tapley, Kris Tapley. Sometimes I talk shit on there, but I'm increasingly pulling back. So yeah, you can find me at those spots. But check us out, 50MPH pod. There's going to be 50 episodes total. It's a good binge. If you haven't listened to anything yet, check us out.
It's a great
Yeah, and can I just say again, without hyperbole, what a fantastic podcast and what a brilliant concept and build-up and execution. And I said this in a tweet that nobody cared about, but you stuck the landing even better than they did with that bus.
Thank you, man.
That's off. And yeah, what a coup getting Keanu and Sandra Bullock on there.
It was a journey to get there, and
Yeah.
I owe them a debt of gratitude for sure. We made a splash with that one.
Great work.
Amazing.
Thank you. And go pick up Empire magazine over there in the UK. I
Yes.
wrote
Right, yeah.
a bit in this month's issue, the Deadpool Wolverine cover. Think about Speed in there.
Next week, we're back with another special guest episode with Kevin and Jay from KJ and a Podcast and their choice of movie Ready Player One. And we'll be back for our final run of Season 5 episodes very soon. But until then, remember to write something after that, which I have not done.
That's good.